Doris and I looked at the small figure headed towards Hollywood Boulevard. Doris humphed at me and said, "You gave her the money? Well, you were bamboozled. That is $17 the church is never going to see again." She said, "I've seen her around here before. She ain't going anywhere anytime soon." Doris ran the senior lunch program downstairs at the church, and she felt she knew most of the people in the neighborhood. I was the new pastor at the church. I had given a woman $17 for a cheap hotel room nearby so that she could be fresh to catch a bus that would take her back home the next day to some state I don't remember where. She promised me that she would pay the money back. I don't remember how much later that it was, but first one envelope and then another arrived postmarked from another state bearing a total of $17 in $1 bills. It looked as if they had spent a good amount of time wadded up and pressed. There was a note that said, "Bless you," or words to that effect, on one of the envelopes. And I'm happy that this happened early on to me in ministry, because I remember her always when I'm face to face with someone who may or may not be telling me a real story. And over the years, I no longer care if the stories are real or not. I recall Doris saying that we'll never see that money again, as I watched a woman walk into the distance knowing that, at least for that night, she's going to have a place to sleep, a sense of stability, safety, and her dignity on her last night in Hollywood. And it is the best $17 I ever put up. I just decided I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what goes on here during the week, and I'm going to try as hard as I can to tie it into the scripture. During the week here, we try to meet people's needs on the most basic level. Some of you have given me gift cards, which I give out based on need and availability. Grocery and gas cards, I've got some here. I had to actually get some this morning. Ralph's card, Arco card, and the much coveted, I've discovered, bus passes that Michael orders in bulk. Those seem to be the most useful things to have on hand. But of course, you know, a place to live, a working car, not having to make a choice between food and medications. These would be much, much, much better gifts by far. And when the rains come, so do people who want to stay out of it. Johnny is one of those people that you might see here during the week. I'm changing people's names a little bit. The last time I saw him, he was standing in the doorway of Plummer Hall while our Bible study was going on. Johnny always shows up when I'm on a tight schedule and when I'm behind. And Johnny takes an inordinate amount of time from me. And this was no exception. I get exasperated when I just see Johnny, but I know I'm going to help him. He needed a room out of the rain, and it couldn't just be any room. I know this. It had to be his favorite Motel 6, where Santa Ana meets Tustin. They know him there, and they're very good to him. Johnny has difficulty walking. He wraps his legs in plastic. He's told me why, I can't remember. He has a bag full of meds that are hanging around his neck, and he has not bathed anytime soon. And so after I call the motel, we're in my car, and we're on our way. And on the trip over, I apologized for sounding so exasperated with him. He countered that a dinner at Applebee's would make it all right. And could I make it 2 nights at the Motel 6? Not one. I think this is one of the reasons he's exasperating to me, because he's a bargainer. And wouldn't you be also if you were in his position? Last week there were more. There's a regular with whom I built a relationship with over the years. I let her nap in the youth room from time to time, and everyone gets to plug in their cell phones and recharge. She's become a little special to me. She tells me that she has a son down south. I've been trying to get information so that maybe I could call him and say, your mother's living on the streets. Your mother is living on the streets. Why don't you do something? But she guards that information. And she says when he does send her money, she says she really looks forward to it because it can give her up to a whole week at the Marriott. And I say, are you sure that's really what you want to do with your money? And she says, yes, because for 1 week, I'm off the streets and I live like a queen. And you know, when I think about it, I might want to do the same. She orders room service, she watches the television, she's dry, she's clean, and she's living like a queen. But last week, a new person facing a second day of homelessness came and looked so cheerful in asking for help that I thought, oh my dear, you don't know what the third or fourth or fifth day might look like. And so after setting her up for a nap in a safe space, I walked to our neighbor, Journey, on the other side of us, spoke with the administrator about what they did to help people. And they pretty much mirror what we did. And so I contacted Father Steve at the Greek Orthodox Church on the other side. And he was more than happy to make an appointment to get together and compare notes, and soon. My hope is that the three churches might do better to serve the people coming to our doors by at least being in more open communication. I would like to think that a conservative evangelical church, a progressive mainline church, and a Greek Orthodox church can all agree on at least one thing, that what Jesus has to say about helping people in need runs through all of our traditions, even if we are so different on other things. I noticed a post that was running around on Facebook that reads, there are over 350,000 churches in America, so why are there over 500,000 people sleeping on our streets? Clarissa Pinkola Estes localizes this to say, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our own reach. I have been so changed in these many years now. I know my colleagues have been changed as well, perhaps many of you as well, by the new normal of homelessness, and the new normal of the working poor, a husband and wife, or a couple, I should say, who are working full-time for minimum wage and are too poor to maintain an apartment or raise a family. In over 20 years of direct contact with people who are living day to day with uncertainty and danger and exhaustion and near hopelessness, I realize, sadly, that what I'm really doing is handing out Band-Aids. In fact, one might even say that what we're doing is enabling our society through our small efforts to help people when so much more assistance is needed, and until we can transform our society and our government by convincing enough people with the influence to help that it is in our own best interests, as well as the health and the well-being of so many people who have fallen through our thin safety nets, we will continue to administer little or ineffective relief. The story of Zacchaeus is about how Jesus found and turned around one such person, a powerful man, although for some reason they're hung up on his small stature. UCC theologian Kate Huey writes, Jesus is really the main character in the story about Zacchaeus. She says, while the tax collector is scrambling to see him, surely it took more than curiosity to make him sacrifice his dignity by running and climbing a tree. Jesus is seeking Zacchaeus, this non-person who was shunned and hated by the crowd. And you know, the people really had good reason to hate this guy because tax collectors were considered to be traitors. They were instruments of Rome's oppressive system, and this is the chief tax collector. And we may all be sinners, but this guy's a much bigger sinner than the rest of us. He's also rich. He has presumably extracted his wealth from his own people. And a few chapters back, though, when you read, we learned how dear to the heart of God the lost are. The lost, in the stories of the lost sheep and the lost coins and the lost son, all are worth going after and looking for because they are so greatly valued by the seeker. And Zacchaeus may be hated by the crowd, but he is loved and he is valued by Jesus. And people question Jesus about that. He's eating, he's drinking with the lowest of the low. Why is he doing that? Now perhaps Jesus asks around to find out the name of that fellow who's up in the tree. It's who Jesus is when he looks for the lost. That's his mission. And you might even say that seeking the lost is the point of it all, after all. And then comes the question of our own response to this text and the questions it provokes in our own lives. During the stewardship season we're in right now, we read through the lens of giving to the church so that we might participate in the transformation of our world, so that we might bind the world together through the ministry of our church and the whole United Church of Christ. And many of the passages in the Gospels and the whole Bible they're about money and possessions, the poor and justice, abundance and generosity. And Jesus, he's not afraid of talking about money. He uses it metaphorically and addresses it concretely. He tells the rich ruler to just give it all away, and he rejoices when Zacchaeus shares the story of his own giving. When we reflect on the sadness of the rich ruler who held onto his money and the joy of Zacchaeus who gives it away, do we hunger for that kind of joy and depth of trust? And there is finally the uncomfortable question of our role in the suffering of others because of economic injustice. And we know it's all around us. Our failure to share freely like Zacchaeus. One could make a case that Zacchaeus is stuck in such a system and sincerely wants to make reparation for his gain from it. He understands that he can't just enjoy the benefits of a bad system and not do something about those who suffer from his enjoyment. And perhaps the most difficult reality is that we who live and participate and benefit from an unjust and hurtful system, as Zacchaeus did, are not really able to claim personal holiness if we turn away from seeing our own complicity in such a system. The fact is, Fred Craddock writes, that one is not privately righteous while participating in a corrupt system that robs and crushes other persons. And perhaps one answer to the question about Zacchaeus is that he responded wholeheartedly to Jesus' call to follow him, just as we're invited to respond to our encounter with Jesus with this free and abundant and faithful generosity, and in so doing, to really experience our own lives and the life of the world as it can be and should be transformed. Like Zacchaeus, we will find that nothing is the same anymore. This stuff changes you. This stuff has changed me. And you know when it's right. Rabbi Harold Kushner summed it up when he said, when you carry out acts of kindness, you get this wonderful feeling inside. It's as though something inside your body responds and says, yes, this is how I ought to feel. And this is how our country also ought to feel. Werner Dozier, Episcopalian, said, the important question to ask is not, what do you believe? But what difference does it make that you do believe? Does the world come nearer to the dream of God because of what you believe? Is there room for a movement toward justice because of what you believe? Do you draw others into that vision because of what you believe? Are you changed because of what you believe? Is the world around you changed because of what you believe? Because we can do so much better. I can introduce you to wonderful people who sit on our benches during the week, who can show you that that is true. And we can envision so much more for our country and our world when we can answer those questions in actions that ripple forward to heal and make new. Amen.